Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Bhasite sute tunhi bhave sampajanakari evan hivo sikitabang. So, speaking or listening or remaining silent, we can train our minds in clear comprehension. Thus, should we train ourselves? So, good evening, everyone. It's nice to see some people tuning in this Wednesday evening for another Clear Mountain conversation, another Clear Mountain talk. And this will be the first of a number of talks that Tanisabo and I will be giving on the theme of the 5 aggregates. So starting this month and then on into future months, we'll be going through the book Buddha Dhamma, one word, by P.A. Payutto. So this is a book which several thousand pages, written, I believe, in either the early 80s or perhaps even the early 70s in Thailand by the foremost scholar monk P.A. Payutto, and it's really been highly praised. Ajahn Jayasaro said it would be, if you could take one book onto a desert island, that would be it. It's a big book. You'd definitely be able to spend time on it. But yeah, the first chapter is on what's called the 5 aggregates, the 5 khandas in Pali, or the 5 skandhas in Sanskrit. And this evening, we'll have a guided meditation, basically like a meditative tour of these five aggregates, basically the constituents of any human life. And we'll describe those through an embodied meditative practice, which will guide people through. And as usual, the first part will be this bit of guidance and speak some thoughts from me. And then after that, maybe around 6:25 or so, we'll switch over to question and answers. So people can put questions in the comments on YouTube or in Facebook. You can see both of those. So yeah, we can start without any further ado. And people can just take a comfortable posture. Sitting upright or standing upright if you're doing standing meditation. And we'll come to the first of the 5 aggregates, which is form, known in Pali as rupa. So this is the body. And the meditative exercise which we'll be examining the body with is the body scan. So this will be familiar to anyone who's done a Goenka retreat. But basically what we do, once the body is in an upright but relaxed posture, again, you can have your eyes open or closed, it's up to you. But it can help to have your eyes closed, as can help bring the attention inward, and we'll be bringing the mind to the sensations at the top of the head and gradually scanning through the body. But starting at the top of the head, see if you can feel whatever it is you're feeling right now at the topmost part of your body, the top of the skull. And any feeling is fine. And allowing awareness now to lower and become aware of your forehead. Become aware of the eyes and the ears, the nose. And just coming to feel this body, this part of the body as it is. not trying to change it. When you bring your body to a certain part, say the cheeks, the upper lip, the musculature might just relax by itself. That's totally fine. But we don't need to do anything. And actually for this exercise, we can just observe what's present. The lower lip and chin and jaw. And feeling this from the inside. This is not a visualization technique, but an embodied practice. Feeling the neck, the back of the neck, the front of the neck, from the inside. Whatever you're feeling, down shoulders, the upper arms and lower arms. You can feel what's on the surface of the skin or some musculature, ligaments. Bring the body to the chest, knowing the chest and the sternum, the stomach, the belly, all around, so in the front and the back. Knowing and feeling our bottom, what we're sitting on, bringing attention down through the upper legs, knowing the knees, feeling the touch of clothes or any heat, coolness, or touch of wind, going to the calves and the feet. And now if you can, see if you can become aware of the whole body all at once, in one big glimpse. This is a body. This is the where of practice, the material aspect, corporeal aspect. The Buddha compared this body to a lump of foam. This is rupa, this is form. And you can feel that lumpiness and foaminess as you actually bring the mind into the body like this. And we'll switch now to the next of the 5 khandhas, what's known as Vedana, or feeling tone. This is the affective or hedonic aspect of our life, our experience. The Buddha said it was like bubbles on the surface of water. And feeling, the Buddha said, is of 3 kinds. You've got pleasant feeling, that's sukha, unpleasant feeling, that's dukkha, and neither pleasant nor unpleasant feelings, this neutral feeling. In the meditative experience or practice that we'll do to get in touch with feelings, well, there are many practices we could do. One quite useful one, and perhaps novel for some, will be actually paying attention to what's called spiritual pleasant feelings. So non-corporeal or this is not the pleasant feelings of the body, but actually the pleasant feelings of the mind. And Bhante Nalio teaches that, and you can test for yourself, that there is a pleasant spiritual, or what's called niramisa, so spiritual, non-corporeal, pleasant feeling, which comes along with being mindful. And see if you can tap into that. Just, it can be subtle, but any pleasantness, pleasant mental feeling that can come along with just being awake and aware in the present moment. This is a feeling tone, an immediate just positive vector or pleasant sense that you get when you turn to the mind's pleasant experiencing of having mindfulness. And for all the pleasantness of that and the fascinating nature of that, when you explore that particular meditative focus, for the purpose of this evening, we'll shift to explore the next of the 5 aggregates, sanya, or perception, cognition, or even in Thai, it's translated as memory. This is the labels or the cognitive aspect of the mind, the labels that we put on our experience. And for this practice, for the meditative experience of sanya, again, like Vedana, there are many things we could pay attention to, but here we'll actually use a particular word which will hopefully guide the mind into a particular perceptual experience. And that word, if you wanted to experiment with this, is just gratitude. So gratitude is a word, it's a concept, it's a perception, and it can shade the way we experience our lives. And just bring up this word gratitude into your mind. Bring up the word, and even better, see if you can feel the peripheries of that concept, or the, hopefully, memories, other memories of things you have to be grateful for, or other perceptions will congeal and just satellite and circle this concept of gratitude. And these memories and perception, this is a label. There are many labels that we can put onto our experience, many sanya, different ways that we could cognize the world. We could find fault. If we wanted to meditate on the word fault, faults. Deficiencies, we could do that. But rather, see what the word gratitude, what dropping that drop of dye into the water of the mind, what does that do? It's almost like a reverse dye. It can actually just clear up otherwise colored water of the mind. I'm just grateful. And we'll shift to the 4th of the 5 aggregates, 4th khanda, which is sankhara, or mental formations, mental volitions. This is the active part of the mind. Or another word is conative, which basically means the active or the doing parts of the mind. And like all the other aggregates, it's empty of any inherent self. The Buddha said it was like a plantain tree. That is, it has no essential core to it. And for this, meditative exercise. Again, we're getting practice intentionally shifting our object of meditation, which is just a good practice, a good skill to learn, because although our life is brief on one level, sometimes the days can seem long, and having more than one trick up your sleeve, having more than one meditative object that you are familiar with and actually learn to love can be a good thing, because you might not always feel like doing one particular method. But here, with the bodily formations aspect, we can pay attention to the breath and watching the breath, actively paying attention to the in-breath and the out-breath. And you can note in on the in-breath and out on the out-breath, or you can count the breaths. Whatever it takes just to keep returning. Again, this is mental shifting, mental refocus. The unintentional sankharas will run off, mental formations run off into the future about things you're going to do after this period, or things you did earlier in the day. But you allow the sankhara of mindfulness, the sankhara of intentionality, let that come back to the breath. Knowing the in-breath and knowing the out-breath. You can think about this conative, or this sankhara, mental formations, mental volitional aspect of the mind, as being like the what of our experience. What are we doing? What is the mind doing? And this is where kamma or karma acts. And here we're training it to do something very specific, just to watch the breath. And coming to the fifth of the 5 aggregates, one which undergirds our experience of all of them. This is vijnana in Pali, vijnana in Sanskrit. This is consciousness. And this is the sentient aspect of the human experience, the knowing aspect. And although the 5 aggregates are named that way, aggregates, as in you go to a rock quarry and you've got a pile of sand and you've got a pile of small diameter rock and you've got a pile of gravel and you've got a pile of boulders. Similarly, each of these aspects of our experience can be spoken about in different ways, different aspects of our experience, but the Buddha said that they are conjoined, especially the mental aspects are conjoined, not disjoined. And this is especially true for consciousness. So for the meditative appreciation of consciousness, we can practice open awareness. So for this exercise, see if you can have an embodied and meditative appreciation of the statement that consciousness is not inside the head, but the head is inside consciousness. Consciousness can know not just from behind the eyes looking out, but consciousness can know all around the head and really all around the body, in the body, internally, externally, internally and externally. And you can just rest in this open appreciation, this open awareness. Just knowing. We've been giving W words like the where of form, the when of feeling, the why of perception, the what of sankharas or mental formations. And you can think of consciousness as being the who. Really, there is, in Buddhism, we speak of not self, so we're not positing a capital W who, but this is the subjective experience of our life. So it can be thought of almost as metaphorically as a who, that which knows. In Thai, you've got the phrase, the puru, the one who knows. But really, it's just that which knows. It's just the knowing itself. And you can just rest there. Allowing the mind not to just be limited to a behind the eyes kind of prison, but experiencing broader, more spacious awareness. So I think can end this meditative tour of the 5 khandhas, the 5 aggregates there, and appreciation for those who have followed along. And now we can open things up to questions. That was a whirlwind tour, and I'm sure it was horrible for the not unsizable group of people who just hate guided meditations. To all of you who are in that subgroup of people, I apologize. I hope you were able to endure, or at least turn off your sound while I was talking. But yeah, people can put questions about any of these 5 aggregates, or other questions that you might have, thoughts that are going on. Hopefully, some of you are familiar with some of these techniques. Probably more of them are familiar to some people than others. We've got a first question. So is body permanent or impermanent? Question mark. Same question for feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and 6th sense consciousness. Why is it important to know the answers according to the Buddha? So yeah, this is a great question, and it's one which the Buddha himself asked. There's a great, I mean, he didn't just ask once. He seems this was a question which he would ask his disciples repeatedly. Is form permanent or impermanent? And probably the most famous instance of this is the Anatta Lakkhana Sutta in the Samyutta Nikaya, and it's also in the Vinaya. And the Buddha would ask the question, and because it's, the record, what we have is the record of his conversation, we just get the answer right away that is the body permanent or impermanent? Kayang anicchang va. So is the body permanent or impermanent? And the interlocutors, or actually the person being asked, will almost pretty much invariably say impermanent. And this is something which hopefully within a meditative experience you can feel very directly. I mean, just putting your attention on your hand right now, especially the palm, is a very sensitive part of the body, and you can just feel, a throbbing or a vibration. And vibration is, perhaps the most tactile, embodied expression of impermanence that one can know. And and similarly with the other 5 aggregates, is feeling permanent or impermanent? And the people being asked would say, impermanent, Lord, impermanent, Bhante, anicca Bhante. Is feeling impermanent? Is perception impermanent? Impermanent, Bhante. Is our mental formations permanent or impermanent? Impermanent. Is vijnana, is consciousness permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, Bhante. And so that's the Buddha's questions and his disciples' answers, and he does agree with them. But again, it's Buddhism is not necessarily a dogma, or it's a lot of teachers will suggest that that's not the best way to pick it up. There's certainly an academic way of relating to the teachings where you just have the right answer, and there's something which is appealing about that approach. And for my own part, I can't say I've ever found anything that's permanent about the body or feelings or perceptions or mental formations or consciousness. And why is this important? The next question that the Buddha asks in the Anatthalaka Sutta after the person answers impermanent, the Buddha asks, is that which is impermanent painful or pleasurable? Is it dukkha or is it sukha? And the people being asked said, actually, it's dukkha, that is, it's unsatisfactory in the sense that if it's not permanent, if it's impermanent, then it won't be a lasting source of happiness. It won't be supremely satisfying. So in that sense, it's dukkha, in the sense that it's not totally sukha, it's not totally pleasant. And if something is not self, and if it's unsatisfactory, then why would you want to pick it up as self? Then how could you say it's self if you can't control it? So that's, this investigation, and it really is. I mean, you can take any of these almost as a koan, and to really look deeply, is my experience permanent or impermanent? Is form permanent or impermanent? And you can really just stop and listen. And I think the deeper you can listen, and the more profoundly you can ask the question, then perhaps the more profound the answer will be that comes back. And of course, there could be a philosophical argument made that even though it feels impermanent, it feels like it's vibrating, in a sense, in a sense, these things are permanent. And what do you say to such an argument? So I'd say just experiment with it. And why it's important is that when you see the impermanence, the not self, the unsatisfactoriness of things, it leads to letting go. You don't have to suffer when the body gets old, because it's going to get old. And you don't have to suffer when you can't control your moods all the time. So letting go is happiness. So good question. Thank you. Can you explain Dharma? Yes. Well, it's got many meanings to it. So Dharma is the Sanskrit word, and Pali is Dhamma. And there are quite a few different meanings of the word Dhamma or Dharma. Gave a talk on our website, I think it's called Dhammic Intelligence, where we list about 6 different definitions of Dhamma, which come up in the Pali Canon, the earliest Buddhist texts. In one sense, Dhamma just means the Buddha's teachings. In other senses, it's used just to mean phenomenon, all phenomena, everything you see, internally, externally, the mind, the body, inside yourself or in others, all of that is Dhamma, maybe with a lowercase d. Another meaning is Dhamma with a capital D, meaning not just the teachings, but just the truth or the laws of nature. So that's a quick answer. Another aspect is just mental phenomenon, or thoughts can be considered dharmas, or mental states are also another type of lowercase d dharma. So yeah, that's a range of the different meanings of Dharma. So actually, I was thinking of guided meditation was awesome, Ajahn. Many thanks for it. Okay, that's good to hear. I also like guided meditations, and but I've also got compassion for those who don't. So, but that's the great thing about the internet, is that you can just mute the person who's trying to guided meditate at you. Ajahn, can you share some experiences of positive non-worldly mind states? Thank you. Yeah, so this is what Rick is referring to, is that second guided meditation that we did on Vedana. So I mentioned that Vedana is usually broken down into three types: pleasant, sukha, unpleasant, dukkha, and neither pleasant nor unpleasant, which are just neutral feelings. And it's broken down in many ways. In those three, or sometimes just two, or sometimes just one. There's just dukkha. And at other times, it's broken up into six. So you've got pleasant physical sensations. That's easy to understand. That's the when you've got like goosebumps from some pleasant sensory experience, and the pain of the body is certainly easy and a universal experience for everyone. But you've also got pleasant mind states and unpleasant mind states. Unpleasant mind states are also, everyone knows those as well. Basically the depressive mind states and obsessive mind states, and you can think of them as dark mind states. And the positive mind states are, like what we were exploring in the meditation, is the very subtle pleasure which just comes along with mindfulness. You can experience similar pleasant mental experience. So this is called niramisa. So samisa is worldly, and niramisa is unworldly or spiritual. So spiritual mental happiness is, it also can come along with that perception that we were doing in the perception-based meditation of gratitude. Yeah, when you learn to have a functional and a working and a sustainable and a beautiful and cooperative relationship with the concept and the idea and the experience of gratitude, then it's beautiful, and it feels beautiful, and it feels bright. And that's something that you can tap into. And I believe that according to Abhidhamma, there's pleasant sensation that comes with any wholesome mind state. So there's a whole, basically every wholesome mind state, what's called in Abhidhamma the sobhana cettas, or the beautiful, sobhana cetasika, the beautiful mental aspects. And there's an aspect of mental pleasure that comes along with all of those. So see if that's true. See if there's a spiritual or a mental well-being, slight joy, faint sense of well-being or gladness that comes along with loving kindness, or with forgiveness, or as we said, appreciation, compassion. Those are some of the fairly mild to start off with, pleasant mind, non-worldly mind states. But then you've got the rapture of piti and sukha, which come with jhanic. When you develop your mindfulness and your meditation deeper and deeper, more profoundly and more absorbed in an absorptive way, then the pleasantness and the positiveness there becomes quite profound. There are the texts talk about different types of rapture. You've got the welling up rapture, which is like a sea, or you've got the rapture which just sends chills throughout your body, or you've got a rapture which just shoots up and down the body, or you've got the rapture which just fills the body, etc. So those are other more gross and tangible and visceral types of non-worldly, positive, pleasant mind states. Hello, Ajahn. How does Buddhism relate to the idea of one's aura? Is this relatable to the consciousness that lies outside the body, which you referred to? Very interesting question, yeah. And this is one which doesn't really get talked about much in Western Buddhist circles. I think because most people don't see what's called aura. In Thailand or other Buddhist countries, it is talked about more. And there are certainly, well, in the commentaries, again, you mentioned commentaries, and some people would just turn off and say, okay, commentaries, fake. But yeah, there's commentarial mention of the Buddha's aura as comprising 5 or 6 different colors: white, blue, red, yellow. And maybe another color that I'm forgetting. It's back. Actually, that's the reason for you see there's an international Buddhist flag, which somebody came up with maybe in Sri Lanka several decades ago, which has these colors, and the colors are based on the colors of the Buddha's aura, according to tradition. But yeah, you don't really see much mention of auras in terms of colors in the canon, but you do see references to people looking at the Buddha, specifically the first person, the first wanderer who the Buddha meets after he's enlightened, before he teaches the 5 disciples the Dhammacakka Sutta. He sees this wanderer, and the wanderer says, whoa. He meets him on the road, and the wanderer says, whoa, you're looking really bright, and who's your teacher? And the Buddha gives a short teaching, and the person is not inspired. It's a bit too philosophical or too lofty a teaching, so he just wanders away. But this seeing the pasana, or the brightness of someone, that's spoken of quite a lot. Like, your face is bright, Venerable Sir. This is something which you do see referenced multiple times in the canon, and that could be seen as an aura, or at least in that direction. It's certainly not saying that explicitly, and I don't even know what the Pali word for aura would be, because I think it is this concept of the Buddha's multicolored aura mostly comes in the commentaries, and I've only seen reference to them in English. But great question. I'll look into that. Next question. So, does boredom fall under neutral? Yes, exactly. So, neutral sensations are quite fascinating. So in a discourse called, I believe, the Chula Vedala Sutta, Majjhima Nikaya number maybe 45, 40, yeah, something like that, 46, 43, not sure. But basically, yeah, I think it's 43. There's reference to painful feelings are painful when they persist, and they're pleasant when they pass away. Pleasant feelings are pleasant when they persist, and painful when they pass away. But neutral feelings, so this sense of boredom, neutral feelings are unpleasant when they are not known, and they are pleasant when they are known. And this is kind of the solution to boredom. So boredom really indicates, a definition for boredom could basically be the inability to find interest. So interest is the solution for boredom. And this is kind of what that statement of the Buddha in the Chula Vedala Sutta is pointing to, is that neither pleasant nor painful feelings, adukkama sukha vedana, or this neutral feelings, are actually pleasant in a sense when you know them. And similarly, when you know and look at and are interested in boredom, then it can actually become pleasant. So great question, and a great exploration, a great thing to look at. Bhante, I keep hearing about the non-self. Could you explain what exactly this is referring to? Thank you. Yes, so non-self is the third of what are called the three characteristics, which again, these are not so much dogma of Buddhism, but internal and meditative investigations. Those three are looking at impermanence. So is the body, our feelings, our perceptions and mental formations, consciousness, are they permanent or impermanent? And are they pleasant, wholly pleasant, or do they admit to some unpleasantness, unsatisfactoriness? And then the third category, the third characteristic is this not self or anatta, Sanskrit an-atman. So this is a refutation of the Hindu concept of an atman, or a soul or a self, capital S, which persists after death and is always present and always the same. And what the Buddha is doing here is suggesting that we look inwardly and say, is there a self? Like, can I find a self? And is this body truly myself? I mean, is myself when I was 2 the same as myself this year? Were my feelings yesterday the same as my feelings today? I mean, where's the self in my feelings? Where's the self in my perceptions? I was having very different perceptions before I became a monk. Maybe you were different perceptions when you were a kid versus when you were in your 20s. Is this consciousness self? Looking into that. And why this is important is because, and why the Buddha suggested that that there is a non-self, an atman, is because when one clings to a sense of self, then that causes suffering. And it's just so easy to cling to a self, whether you're holding it to this body, how good you look, or how bad you look, or how young you look, or how old you look. When you hold on to this body as self, that's going to cause you suffering. When you hold on to the selfness of your pleasant feelings, when they pass, which they will, then you're going to suffer. When you hold on to this consciousness, these mental formations are myself, when those pass away, if you're forcing your mind to believe that's my essential self, when it changes, then that is not going to be pleasant. So, oh yeah, we've got quite a few more questions, but only a few more minutes. But great questions. Thank you, everyone. At 6:45, in just 2 minutes, we'll shift over to Zoom. So anyone who would like to continue this discussion, we can go over there, and I'd love to hear people's thoughts rather than just yelling out and speaking my own. So I also enjoyed the guidance. I think this was the first time exploring gratitude made me feel so connected and appreciative of my ancestors. Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. And that's worth, I think, many minutes of turning inwards and thinking about that. So thank you for highlighting that specifically. And I think our last question. So thank you, Ajahn. I have experienced many of these mind states. Today, I'm feeling awful from chronic illness. I'm sorry to hear that. However, my mind state shifted dramatically when we meditated on gratitude. That's really beautiful. It's amazing how I think that simile of kind of like the anti or the reverse or the kind of magic drop of dye, and you take this drop of gratitude and you drop it into the heart, and unlike a red, blue, green, whatever food coloring dye that's going to change the color of the water, this clears everything up, just gratitude. And and this can be a power. And if it doesn't automatically click for you, then that's not a problem at all. But being open to the idea can be another source of happiness. So thanks everybody for showing up, and I'll look forward to continuing the conversation. You can find the link for our Zoom conversation. I'm putting it in the show notes right now or in the chat. And you can also find that in Clear Mountain Monastery under the calendar. And we'll shift over there and call that an evening. And people can find that link to Buddha Dhamma, the P.A. Payutto book, in the first chapter on the 5 aggregates, and just read along. I wasn't really sticking to that text so much, but it's definitely worth a read, and there's some pretty insightful points that P.A. Payutto makes in that discourse. So, and on top of that, I'll be in Seattle. I'll be heading to Seattle tomorrow, and Tanisbo and myself will both be there for the normal St. Mark's gathering on Saturday. So hopefully see some of you there, and take care and see you next time.